Welcome, early American literature friends. This video is going to go through the middle section of Mary Rowlandson's narrative of the captivity and restoration. So it's going to go from the 8th remove to the 18th remove. So we're going to go through 10 removes as quickly and efficiently as possible. This is a depiction of King Philip, actually, and King Philip, who's the leader of these remaining unified tribes in New England and who led this war. He was called Metacomet by the Native Americans. He was called King Philip by the English colonists. You see this depiction of him here. He organized and unified these tribes to make this kind of final stand. Mary Rowlandson's captivity was part of the last year, 1676. When she is released, it is near the end of spring, 1676, and within that year, by the time you get to the end of the summer, King Philip's war will be over. King Philip is killed by a Native American who is allied with the English colonists, and King Philip's war is over. So you are less than 6 months from there. As Mary Rowlandson is taking you through this, there's all these raids and attacks on English towns, but you are less than a year from that being over, and from King Philip and the sort of unification of the tribes. They're going to be eventually defeated by the English army. But she starts off the 8th remove. They cross over the Connecticut River and go and meet King Philip. And they, the English scouts for the English army are nearby. And then she encounters her son Joseph. My son Joseph unexpectedly came to me. You get another Job reference in that first paragraph as well, where she says, "Now we may say as Job, naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return. The Lord gave, the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." There's some more Job typology where it's like, I had a home and my children in comfort, and now I'm sort of naked. The Lord has taken away. There's also scholars, there's an important section just a few sentences down from there where she says, "Here I may take occasion to mention one principal ground of my setting forth these lines, even as the psalmist says, to declare the works of the Lord and his wonderful power in carrying us along, preserving us in the wilderness while under the enemy's hand, and returning of us in safety again." That preserving us in the wilderness, carrying us along, preserving us in the wilderness, and returning us in safety again. There's the heart of the captivity narrative. One of the terms that's on our syllabus and on our first exam. But it's also, this is an important moment where she sort of steps aside from telling the story and says, let me tell you why I told this story. And it's not to sort of celebrate myself and how I survived this. She argues that it's to sort of celebrate God and in her sort of Christian faith, her sort of celebrate recognition that it was God who like took care of her and provided for her and carried her through this difficult 12-month period. "When I was in the canoe, I could not be amazed at the numerous crew of pagans that were on the bank," and so she takes a canoe over to the other side of the Connecticut River. There is also an important moment in this. You made it to March. "Then my heart began to fail, and I fell a-weeping, which was the first time to my remembrance that I wept before them. Although I had met with so much affliction, and my heart was many times ready to break, yet could I not shed one tear in their sight." People, one of the ways people read this story is Mary Rowlandson sort of dealing with and processing trauma, and this is an important moment if you're reading this as like this sort of experience of trauma and survival and then post-traumatic stress. Because here she has a true breakdown and like breaks down in front of the Native Americans, which she says she has never done before. It's a really dark low point for her. But now I may say is Psalm 137, verse 1, "By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down, yea, we wept when we remembered Zion." And she's thinking back to her home, and you get this more typology where she connects herself to Babylon and Zion. "Yes, I answered, they would kill me. No, none will hurt you." This is King Philip talking to her. "Then came one of them, gave me 2 spoonfuls of meal to comfort me, and another gave me half a pint of peas. Then we went to see King Philip." King Philip offers her a pipe, tobacco, and this is one of the multiple times in this where she talks about how bad smoking is and how people offer her. She used to smoke and then she quit, and it's just a waste of time and bad for you. "Now the Indians gathered their forces to go against Northampton." Again, this is one of those occasions where they're doing these raids and attacks on towns and villages along the frontier of the English colonies. They fell to boiling the ground nuts and parching of corn. We don't have ground nuts here in the South. They're similar to acorns, but they're much bigger. And what they are doing when they cook or eat ground nuts is they're like crushing them up and making them into something like a porridge or like something like a kind of soup or stew. She makes a shirt for one of King Philip's children, and he gives her a shilling. If you don't know what that is, it's a little bit of English money. She buys some horse meat, and then she eats a pancake. It was made of parched wheat beaten and fried in bear's grease, but I thought I never tasted pleasanter meat in my life. There was a squaw who spake to me to make a shirt for Santa, for which she gave me a piece of bear. Another asked me to knit a pair of stockings, for which she gave me a quart of peas. There's a bunch of basic talking about food and eating food and getting food in this section, and it is because most people understand it as this sort of like, she understands this sort of like bartering and trading, and she's going pretty hungry and doing everything she can to survive and keep herself strong here. The bear grease, if you don't know what she's talking about, it is like lard or fat from a bear that someone has killed. Here was the squaw that gave me, then down at the bottom of that same paragraph, here was the squaw that gave me a spoonful of meal. I put it in my pocket to keep it safe, but somebody stole it, but put 5 Indian corn in the place of it. There's also there's a short paragraph at the end of the 8th remove where she is talking about going to Albany, which would be across this, over a fort, across the state line, what is now the state line in New York. But they say that they're not going to do that. You get to the 9th remove, and she is in New Hampshire. They travel about 5 miles up the river, up the Connecticut River into New Hampshire. There is this, she makes a shirt. Who spoke to me to make him a shirt. When I had done it, he would pay me nothing, but she makes him a shirt, and then he finally trades her a knife for it. I carried the knife in, and my master asked me to give it to him, and I was not a little glad that I had anything they would accept and be pleased with. So she is like happy that she can give this thing of value to her master, Quinnipian. There is also this section, also in this section, the 9th remove, she sees her son Joseph again. She gets lost trying to find him. He has some kind of wound that she calls a boil, and it makes her sad and depressed that he is sort of suffering. You get that section, my son was ill, and I could not but think of his mournful looks, and no Christian friend was near him. And my poor girl, I knew not where she was, because she doesn't see her daughter again. I repaired under these thoughts, but I was fain to go and looked after something to satisfy my hunger, going among the wigwams. You get more descriptions of her eating a piece of bear, eating some ground nuts that are boiled ground nuts they would boil them to like soften them up, like I said, and turn them into a kind of porridge. But now it was savory to me that one would think I was enough to turn the stomach of a brute creature. She go at the beginning of the 10th remove. They only go about 3/4 of a mile, not even a mile. I went again to the place where we were at before to get something to eat. She goes to get more food, but she's forced to go back to her master. The last sentence of that section of the 10th remove is all like generally read to be the sort of like moral of that section, which is sometimes I met with favor, sometimes with nothing but frowns. That like sometimes I got some food and was all right. Sometimes I had to go hungry. The 11th remove, it is April, and they are in New Hampshire at this point. They are about as far north and west as she ever gets, as she ever travels. If you go back to the map, there you can see here, in fact, I'll have to scroll this map up a little bit because you can see she has made it all the way up here into this like New Hampshire, Vermont, corner of Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Vermont right here. The next day in the morning, they took their travel, intending a day's journey up the river. Again, they're still just traveling up the Connecticut River. They had to wait, she has to wait. Quickly, we came to wade over the river. My head was also so light that I usually reeled as I went. And you get just this short little thing where she describes wading across the river. It was upon, then the 12th remove, it's April 9th at this point. So she has gone from February, she's kidnapped on February 10th. We're through March and we're into early April now. this morning I asked my master whether he would sell me to my husband. He answered me, nux, which did rejoice my spirit. Because again, he's saying, yes, I'm willing to trade you for some money or some barter or something like that. She has this argument with Weedamoo, who is her principal owner, or what she calls mistress. My mistress, before we went, was gone to the burial of a papoose. And returning, she found me sitting and reading in my Bible, snatched it hastily out of my hands. So she throws it out of the wigwam. Mary Rowlandson has to go back and get the Bible that another Native American had given her. I ran up, catched it, put it in my pocket, never let her see it afterwards. One thing that's important to note here is Mary Rowlandson, almost all of this entire time, it was very common for women to wear an apron at all times. It was almost like they carried it they almost wore it like a tool belt. They kept various things in it. Aprons back then for women were not just for cooking, they were for like putting things. Women's dresses didn't have pockets. You still hear women complaining about how they don't have pockets. Women's pockets in clothing are not as useful as men's pockets in clothing even now. But the way that women used to get around that was to wear these aprons that they could just like tuck stuff in. And most of the time she kept her Bible tucked in that apron. You see later in the story, she is forced to give her apron. At one point, Weedamoo, her mistress, forces her to give her apron to another Native American woman, but then she gets another one pretty quickly. Aprons were really valuable to these women because it gave them a sort of pocket to put things in, which is where she's keeping her Bible at this point. The thoughts of my going homeward, for so we bent our course, much cheered my spirit and made my burden seem light. So they are going, she understands enough about compass directions to understand that they have turned and are going back southeast, back toward Massachusetts. My spirit was, upon this, I confess, very impatient. She wants them to go back faster. They're not going back as fast as she wants to. You get some typology there in the second paragraph of the 12th remove, that paragraph that starts off, the thoughts of my going homeward much cheered my spirit, where she says, I took my Bible to read, and that quieting scripture came to my hand, be still and know that I am God, which stilled my spirit for the present. So she like calms herself down, settles herself down after reading the Bible. She talks about how hungry she is. I found 6 acorns and 2 chestnuts, which were some refreshment to me. Towards the night I gathered some sticks for my own comfort, that I might not lie cold. But when we came to lie down, they bade me to go out and lie somewhere else, for they had company, they said, come in more than their own. So they've got some friends staying in their wigwam. They tell Mary Rowlandson she has to sleep outside. There's a moment, there's very little violence after the capture of Mary Rowlandson, but you get this. Then one of the company drew his sword and told me he would run me through if I did not go presently. So they force her out of the wigwam at sword point. I went to one wigwam. They told me they had no room. Then I went to another. They said the same. At last, an old Indian bade me to come to him, and his squaw gave me some ground nuts, and she gave me something to lay under my head, and a good fire we had, and through the good providence of God I had comfort. And so she goes to several other wigwams till finally one of the other Native American groups takes her in. And you see this, she has this, even the next morning, she has this mild conflict where she complains about how her basket is too heavy to carry, and that it's hurting her back, and she has this conflict, and that's the end of the 12th remove. There's a lot of the 12th remove is just devoted to this sort of like tension between Weedamoo and the group she was traveling with, and them like not wanting her to sleep in the wigwam that night, and her complaining about her load being too heavy, and them saying, well, who cares, just stop complaining. In the 13th remove, she again trades work for food. The 13th remove, here one begins with, here one asked me to make a shirt for her papoose, for which she gave me a mess of broth. It also gave about a handful of peas and a few roasted ground nuts. And you see her trading. One of her key methods for survival is this sort of trading and bartering, almost always for food. Right after that section is this little section where another Native American, and it's not clear if he's just messing with her and joking around, or if he's just trying to like hurt her or discourage her, tells her that her son has been killed and eaten, cannibalized, and that he himself has ate a piece of her son. but she sort of like does her best to brush it off. But the Lord upheld my spirit under this discouragement, and I considered their horrible addictedness to lying, that there's not one of them that makes the least consciousness of speaking the truth. Again, this is part of her sort of, in her meanest, ugliest depictions of Native Americans, she connects them to demons or Satan or something like that, and part of that is this sort of sin of, for a Christian, the sin of lying, and their addictedness to lying, as she says right here. There is also a moment, another Job connection here, where she is lying beside the fire in the wigwam. She moves a piece of wood in the fire and makes somebody else in the wigwam mad, and they throw ashes in her eyes so that she is like temporarily blinded. She's fine by the next morning. Yet upon this and the like occasion, I hope it is not too much to say with Job. So we're back to Job, more typology specific to the book of Job in the Hebrew Old Testament. Have pity upon me, O ye my friends, for the hand of the Lord has touched me. And in that, the hand of the Lord, like I've been injured, I've been sick, something bad has happened to me. And there's a specific scene in Job where Job sits in the ash pile where like his household burns their trash. And so she sees this connection right down to the ashes. She also, later in that same first paragraph of the 13th remove, she says, about this time I began to think that all my hopes of restoration would come to nothing. I thought of the English army, hoped for their coming and being taken by them, but that failed. I hoped to be carried to Albany, as the Indians had discoursed before, but that failed also. I thought of being sold to my husband, but instead of that, my master himself was gone, and I left behind so that my spirit was now ready to sink. She's in this kind of dark place. She knows they're going back south and east, back towards Massachusetts, but it's not going as fast as she wants. These things that she had hoped to happen haven't happened. That the army would catch them and rescue her, or that she would be traded to Albany when they were over, close to what is now New York and over close to that fort. Yet I can say that in all my sorrows and afflictions, God did not leave me to have my impatience work towards himself. And so again, she like relies on her faith, her spirituality and her Christian faith. And then there's another prisoner whose name is Thomas Reed. They bring him in. He's afraid they're about to kill him. He's a new prisoner. Mary Rowlandson talks to Native Americans and verifies, like, no, you're a valuable prisoner. We're going to keep you and trade you, not just immediately kill you. In the sense that, like, we feel like you can travel with us and keep up. We'll hold you prisoner for a little while and trade you back. The Native Americans did not want to take anybody prisoner who they couldn't get something for, because it was just another use of resources and food that they didn't really have. And so part of what they really wanted is somebody, when they captured people, they wanted to be able to like hold them prisoner for a little while and then ransom them back. They wanted to hold them prisoner while the colonists missed them and just sort of like built up this fear and missing of them, and then they'd trade them back for some money. They would hold them prisoner, use them as servants for a little while, like what's happening with Mary Rowlandson and all of the knitting that she's doing, and shirts and stuff like that, and stockings that she's making for people. You also get at the very end of that paragraph, she makes that connection again. So like were these barbarous creatures to him who was a liar from the beginning. The him who was a liar to the beginning, there is this very obvious Christian reference to Satan and this sort of like Satan lying to God and in Christian iconography. And so she is connecting the Native Americans again to like demons. Here is the second paragraph. After that is the Philip's maid came in with the child in her arms, asked me to give her a piece of my apron to make a flat for it. I told her I would not. This is where King Philip's maid, they have this conflict. The maid and Weetamoo have this conflict with Mary Rowlandson that ends with Mary Rowlandson giving her Weetamoo tries to hit her with a stick. Finally, Mary Rowlandson just gives the maid, King Philip's maid, her whole entire apron. And then in the next paragraph, hearing that my son was come to this place, I went to see him, told him that his father was well, but melancholy as she has heard about her husband. I went to see an English youth in this place, one John Gilbert of Springfield, find him lying without doors. This is one of the more memorable images in this. It's not really important. It doesn't really have any effect on Mary Rowlandson and her experiences. But there's a person who is sick with dysentery. If you don't know that, it's like a combination of flu and diarrhea. People used to get it pretty commonly because of like eating bad or rotten or spoiled food before refrigeration, before we understood refrigeration and germs and things like that. John Gilbert has dysentery. She helps get him back inside and close to a fire and gets him some water so that he can try to recover. Weedamoo and the other people that are with her get mad and they misunderstand what's happening and think that she is trying to get with John Gilbert and like run away and escape. And so they confine her in their wigwam for a day and a half until finally she makes a deal with somebody else to like do some more knitting. That is that whole big paragraph that starts, I went to see an English youth in this place, one John Gilbert. That paragraph tells the story of like her trying to help him, get him to a fire. They misunderstand what she was doing and then hold her cat like and confine her to the wigwam for a day and a half. She also, when she finally gets out of the wigwam, she has a chance to read her Bible again because she's been hiding it, so Weedamoo won't get angry with her for reading it. There's, in that paragraph that begins being got out of her sight, I had time and liberty again to look into my Bible. That is also, she sees her son Joseph one more time right here. Then my son came to see me. I asked his master to let him stay a while with me, that I might calm his head and look over him, for he was almost overcome with lice. Again, they're out in the wilderness and her son has gotten lice in his hair. And she tries to like pick them out and take care of him. This is an important moment for her in the interactions with her kids because this is the last time she sees either of her kids until she sees them after they are all ransomed or escape back. This is the last interaction she has with either of her kids before they are freed. There is that last paragraph of the 13th remove. One of Weedamoo's children dies. She says, my mistress's papoose was sick and it died that night, and there was one benefit of it, there was more room. I went to a wigwam. They bade me come in and gave me a skin to lie upon. On the morning they buried the papoose, and afterward, both morning and evening, there came a company to mourn and howl with her, though I confess I could not much condole with them. People often read this moment and this imagery and her sort of expressing her sentiments here as like, she has gotten through the shock and the trauma of this and has become hardened. She's been there for at least 6 weeks, close to 2 months now. She's been traveling with them, and it has sort of hardened her so that Weedamoo's child dies, and she's like, well, more room in the wigwam for me. And I didn't have any real sadness or condolences or even sympathy. Even though her own child has died, her own 6-year-old child has died, she sees Weedamoo's child die, and she's like, I didn't really feel anything. Most people read that as this sort of like, she is a hardened survivalist by this point in the journey and is not really feeling anything. There is some thoughts about how like she has to lay down like a swine, only a little swill for the body, and then like a swine must lie down on the ground. I cannot express to man the sorrow that lay upon my spirit. The Lord knows it. She feels sorry for herself and the condition that she is in, and you get that in the rest of this section. But she really doesn't feel anything or any kind of sympathy for Weedamoo when her child dies. And like I said, it's generally understood to be this sort of like, she's a survivor and a hardened survivalist now. The 14th remove. Now we must pack up and be gone from this thicket, bending our course towards the bay towns. I having nothing to eat by the way this day, but a few crumbs of cake that an Indian gave my girl the same day we were taken. She gave it to me and I put it in my pocket. And she talks about, in this section, there's another food section. She talks a lot about food. And what she is saying is she still has some crumbs from a cake that someone gave to Sarah the day after they were captured. And it's like old and moldy and hard, but whenever she gets hungry, she digs around in her apron and gets some of those crumbs out and like eats them, and that's how she survives. The other memorable image in this section is also a food image. She talks about how they kill a fawn, they kill a female deer that is pregnant, and they not only eat the deer, but they eat the deer fetus that is inside it. It was so young and tender that one might eat the bones as well as the flesh, and yet I thought it was very good. Again, you combine that with I was happy to eat a deer fetus with this child died and I felt nothing. It is this sort of expression of how hardened and tough she has become. She can eat anything. She doesn't really feel anything for the people that are holding her captive. She is like she taught you. You read the 8th and 9th remove where she talks about crying and having a breakdown, and then you get here to the 13th, 14th, 15th removes, and it's like she's tough. She is this hardened survivor at this point. The 15th remove, we went on our travel. I haven't got one handful of ground nuts for my support that day. They gave me my load. I went on cheerfully. Again, a lot of these sections, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, is this, I was cheerful because I knew we were headed back south and east. I knew we were going back towards Massachusetts. She feels pretty confident that she's going to make it and be traded back, and that's everything is forward progress for her, good progress, because she's going towards what she wants to have happen. We came to the Banquang River. If you remember, this is the river that they crossed before, where they built the rafts and crossed over, and the English army couldn't chase them across this river. This is a happy moment for her because she's crossing this familiar river again, and she's like, I'm backtracking, I'm going home. I cannot but think what a wolfish appetite persons have in a starving condition. For many times when they gave me that which was hot, I was so greedy that I should burn my mouth, that it would trouble me for hours afterwards, and yet I should quickly do the same again. And after I was thoroughly hungry, I was never again satisfied. For though it sometimes happened that I got enough and did eat until I could eat no more, yet I was as unsatisfied as I was when I began. This is her sort of commentary on like truly starving and living hand to mouth and struggling for food and eating just, even when you get to eat, it's not much, it's not full. And she makes this argument that once you've really been hungry like this, like she has been for months now, you're never really satisfied again. That thou shalt eat. You get more typology where she quotes from the book of Micah in the Christian Bible, where she says, thou shalt eat and not be satisfied. And that she says, I understand that feeling now because I can eat and not be satisfied. So you get this, that's all you get really in the 15th remove, is this combination of we cross over the Banquang River and I'm hungry in a way that I'll never be satisfied again. You get the 16th remove. We began this remove wading over the Banquang River again, the crossing of the river. The water is up to the knees and the stream very swift and so cold I thought it might cut me in sunder. If you've ever been in really cold water, especially in a really cold river or stream like this, and it hits you, it feels like it's like cutting into you, slicing into you. The Indian stood laughing to see me staggering along. She's like struggling with her basket on her back to cross the river, and the Native Americans are laughing at her. She repeats the same quote, the same piece of typology from the book of the Christian in the Bible, the book of Isaiah. When thou passest through the waters, I will be with thee, and through the rivers they shall not overflow thee. Again, she repeats the same thing from when she crossed the river the first time. That same typology connecting her experience to Christian experience in the Bible. Then I sat down, put on my stockings and shoes with the tears down my eyes, again, both because of the pain of wading through that cold river and the Indians laughing at her. Quickly there came up to us an Indian who informed them that I must go to Wachusett to my master. Wachusett is where the Redemption Rock is, and so they cross over the river and they get this message that she has to, as quick as possible, get to Wachusett, where they're going to negotiate her surrender. Obviously, that makes her really happy. My strength seemed to come again and recruit my feeble knees and aching heart. They go another mile after they cross the river. She is obviously like exhausted from crossing the river, but also, excited, like she says, revived. The 17th remove, a comfortable remove it was to me because of my hopes. Again, the sort of like hopes of being traded back, hopes of being redeemed. They gave me a pack, along we went cheerfully. Now I may say with David, I am poor and needy and my heart is wounded within me. She's talking about how she's hopeful but tired. There's some food stuff in the 17th remove where she eats boiled soup made out of horse feet. And she also eats horse guts, something like what we would call chitlins. If you know, chitlins are pig intestines. A lot of this stuff, it's worth commenting. Like she says, they give me a piece of the rough or ridding of the small guts, and I boiled it on the coals. Those are things that are generally considered parts of the animal that you don't eat. But at this point, like I said, she can eat anything, and she gets some food and she eats it. Now as my spirit revived again, right there at the very end of the 17th remove. And then the 18th remove, she has this interaction. She sees a dead naked Englishman lying on the side of the trail. And then she says, in this town there were 4 English children captives, and one of them my own sisters, the sister who died during the attack. She tries to help that child however she can. The moment in this section, the moment in the 18th remove that students always remember, that people always comment on, is when she takes the food away from the child. The squaw was boiling horse feet. She cut me off a little piece, gave one of the English children a piece also. Being very hungry, I quickly eat up mine, but the child could not bite it. It was so tough and sinewy, but lay sucking, gnawing, chewing, and slavering. So they're eating basically like ligaments and tendons from these horses' feet, and it's so tough that the small child can't eat it. Then I took it of the child and eat it myself, and savory it was to my taste. So here you have her taking food away from a small child and being like, you can't eat this, but I can, so I'll just take it. Then I may say is Job. So more Job, more typology, and specifically more Job, more typology from the book of Job. The things that my soul refused to touch are as my sorrowful meat. Thus the Lord made that pleasant, refreshing. This gets you, so that's the end of the 18th remove. That gets you from the 8th remove to the 18th remove. This is really the body of her journey. It gets you, they go up from very northwestern, what is now very northwestern Massachusetts, up into Vermont, New Hampshire, in that area. Then they hold her there for a couple, 2 or 3 weeks. Quinnipin leaves and goes back, and then she has to stay with Weetamoo. But then this section really gets you the turnaround, the crossing over the Bangquang River, which is right in here. You see it right there. They cross over the river, and by the time you get to the end of the 18th remove, they are close back to the frontier and back to Redemption Rock in Wachusett, this place where they can meet, and they can negotiate, and she will be traded back. So this is really the main body. The 19th and especially the 20th removes are much longer, because the 20th remove is really her like wrapping things up and explaining everything, both her going home and then the things that happen after she gets back home, because she tells you she gets home, how they get her daughter back, how they get her son back, her sort of post-traumatic stress disorder. This, though, the 8th to 18th sections, this middle section really gives you her traveling and eating and breaking down and crying, but then toughening and hardening up and turning into this sort of survivor who can survive this experience, especially once she knows she's headed back towards Massachusetts and is going to be traded back. Hope this is helpful to you getting through this body section, this middle section. If you have any questions, please be in touch with me, and I'll be happy to dig into any of these specific moments or removes.